to tell you that. We have a plan because of the power of our military, where every bridge in Iran will be decimated by 12 o'clock tomorrow night, where every power plant in Iran will be out of business, burning, exploding, and never to be used again. I mean, complete demolition by 12 o'clock. And it'll happen over a period of 4 hours if we wanted to. We're giving them till tomorrow.
It struck 8 bridges. How is this all impacting the last-minute negotiations?
I've talked to 2 diplomats from the Persian Gulf just now, and they tell me the chances are very low at this point for an agreement before President Trump's 8 p.m. deadline tonight. One of them said, put the chances at 0. And they said that one sort of indicator of this, the perception is from the region, is Vice President J.D. Vance's travel to Hungary today. President Trump said yesterday and has said many times that Vance is part of the negotiating team that's leading the effort with the Iranians to try to strike a deal. That includes also Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner. But the fact that Vance is traveling overseas today is seen as a sign that there's they're not close to a deal.
Especially with critical talks underway.
Laura, no, not in American history have we seen a president essentially threaten nuclear war. And we have to be clear that the President of the United States has unilateral sole authority to make those decisions. So I view this as sort of the throw the spaghetti at the wall phase of our diplomacy. The president is on his own. He's putting out all different ideas. He's playing bad cop. The problem is there's no good cop right now in the diplomacy. Where is NATO on the diplomacy? Where are our Arab allies on the diplomacy? Where is Congress on pushing for diplomacy? We don't hear enough out of them. So the president's acting in his own way. He's doing things, saying things that are very damaging to our credibility as a country, and he clearly doesn't have a diplomatic off-ramp to claim victory and get gains out of this war that he wants, and that's why we're in this moment we're in right now.
I mean, for that matter, where is the nation's top diplomat, Secretary of State Marco Rubio? And there are so many different people that the president appears to be getting advice from. But General, on top of this threat this morning, where the president was talking about annihilating an entire civilization, I also want to play for you some of what Trump has said during yesterday's press conference when he was asked about potential civilian targets. Take a listen.
Are there certain kinds of civilian targets, though? I'm thinking
I don't want to tell you that. I don't want to tell you that. We have a plan because of the power of our military.
This strategy of targeting bridges and power plants, I don't know who told the president this, but even if he carries out these strikes, the Iranian regime is not going to collapse. The key here is opening up the Strait of Hormuz. That is the biggest leverage point. And what Joel was saying, there should be an international effort. This is what past presidents have done to create a coalition. Europe, Japan, and Korea, all the world needs that international waterway to be open. What Iran is doing by firing on these tankers is against international law. And there should be a way, a better tactic would be to create an international effort. The Gulf states will participate in it as well, to reopen the Strait of Hormuz and isolate this regime in Iran. Blowing up, these power plants and bridges is actually going to create sympathy for the regime in Iran and is not going to cause them to collapse.
Look, it is just completely disgusting and not something any president should ever say. And if Republicans are concerned about that, they should be focused on stopping Donald Trump. I mean, look, whether he does it or not, the language he has used, the way he has approached this conflict, his complete lack of concern for all of the costs of the war, the people being killed, the wild and insulting rhetoric he is using, it has done such damage to the United States of America, to our place in the world. There was the old saying about how America first should never mean America alone. I never believed that. But this is Trump with America alone, and America just, morally bankrupt at this point. Those words have done, I think, as much damage to the United States' reputation in the world as anything that's happened, since the end of World War II. I can't even remember what. So regardless of what happens at this point, what Trump has done to date has done an enormous amount of damage. It would certainly make it vastly worse if he carries out any part of that threat. But it is time for Congress to figure out every day, how can we rein in Trump's power? He is clearly unfit to lead this country.
Well, as you know, for a long time, Republicans have not stood up to the president because he had so much power within the party. But with the MAGA base divided, his popularity, even among Republican voters, fading, do you sense in conversations that the war, on top of the economy and the impact the war is having on the economy, is maybe driving some Republicans to oppose what he's doing?
Maybe some. I mean, the most hope we can have is with the voters rejecting the Republican Party at the polls. But look, he has the power they gave him. All right. You go back to right after January 6th, there was a clear opportunity for Republicans in Congress to remove Donald Trump from the political world in America. They chose not to. So the Republican Party has a lot of responsibility for this. We could hope that they change their mind and see how terrible this has been on so many levels. I can't say that I'm optimistic. I think we're going to have to go straight to the voters to hold the Republicans accountable who have allowed Donald Trump to do all the damage that he has done.
If the U.S. Largely could decimate a country in a matter of hours, and certainly even before this threat, that's what Donald Trump suggested yesterday in the Q&A with reporters. What's next? Is there any actual long-term goal, any strategy or plan? He kind of touched on the possibility of rebuilding the country, remaking the country. What's the plan?
Well, first of all, this is part of it that hasn't been focused on, because rightly we've been focused on the pure evil and insanity of what Trump has been saying. But no, we don't have the power to destroy a civilization in 4 hours. Certainly not if we're not going to use nuclear weapons, which I sincerely hope that's not what Trump has in mind. He hasn't indicated that he does. So no, you can bomb a lot of stuff and not really completely destroy a country or even destroy their capability. And we've seen that. Keep in mind, we've been bombing them for 5.5 weeks now, have significantly degraded their military capability, but they still have missiles. They still have drones. They are still able to attack, shoot down 2 of our airplanes, still drop missiles into Israel and surrounding countries. So no, you can't destroy a civilization. You can't even destroy a country's military capability with a 4-hour bombing campaign. So the cluelessness of what he thinks this is going to accomplish militarily is another problem. Even if he launches this 4-hour campaign, at the end of it, a lot more people, a lot more civilians will be dead, but Iran will still be standing. Iran will still have the power to threaten the Strait of Hormuz. It won't even achieve a strategic objective, the strategic objective that Mike Lawler alluded to. Wouldn't it be great if the Iranian regime was gone? Sure, it would, but a rational leader would think, okay, A, can you accomplish that? And B, what is the cost? The blissful dismissal of the cost by Trump and all of these Republican sycophants who are letting him go forward, killing thousands of civilians, the devastation of the global economy, as if that's irrelevant if the goal is to eliminate the Iranian regime. I mean, we've had these discussions for 15 years with a bunch of different presidents, a bunch of different Congresses, and a bunch of different secretaries of defense. We've all made rational decisions about what we can do. And now the Republicans have decided they're not going to be rational anymore. They're going to let Trump be as crazy as he wants to be, and they're not even going to think about the cost. And that is disgusting on a level that has shocked even me as much as I've seen during my time in Congress. This is as shocking and as appalling as anything I have witnessed.
News from Ontario, an employee. Now at noon, we are following breaking news from Ontario. An employee has been taken into custody on suspicion of starting this massive warehouse fire. Thank you for joining us on the KTLA 5 News at noon. I'm Samantha Cortese. That fire raged for several hours, tearing through the 1 million square foot building. Officials believe that was set intentionally. KTLA's Chip Yost is live in Ontario with more information. Hi, Chip.
Yeah, this is a massive fire because the warehouse this was in was massive. We're in the car here so we can show you a live look from the roof cam. Look over here. You see firefighters still on those ladders trying to fight this fire. As we pull out here, you can just see how big of a task that is. This is a warehouse for Kimberly-Clark. They are a company you might not know by name, but you definitely probably know some of their products and have used some of their products. As we tell you about that, Let's take a look at some video from earlier. This was an intense fire, in part because of what was inside that warehouse. Kimberly Clark owns brands like Kleenex and Scott Paper Towels. So this warehouse, this 1.2 million square foot warehouse was full of paper products like that. We don't know exactly what was in there, but we know Kimberly Clark owns Kleenex. They own Scott Paper Towels, Cottonelle toilet paper. So those kinds of products, just think how quickly they can go up, and they went up very quickly according to firefighters. They got a call here. This is on Hellman Avenue here in Ontario. They got a call here to this warehouse at around 12:30 this morning. When they got here, they initially thought it was maybe a small isolated fire and that the sprinklers would help them get it under control. They quickly realized it wasn't the case. There was fire spread out through the whole warehouse, so they had to retreat outside of the warehouse, get firefighters out of there because it was too dangerous. At the time, they thought somebody or heard somebody might be missing. There were 20 employees working at the time. They thought one might be missing. Later turns out that person wasn't missing. That person was a suspect. They believe this was a case of arson. Here is more on that. A robotic firefighting tool from the LA City Fire Department. They've had more than 140 firefighters on this from multiple departments. LA City sent that robot firefighting device you see there over to help out. Here's more on how that thing could help.
It is a fire suppression resource that we can send into a dangerous area where it is not safe to deploy a firefighter to make a better, more pinpoint attack on the seat of the fire inside of the structure, again, to where we can't place a firefighter in danger.
Now, here's another issue going on. This is a live look at that plume of smoke over this fire. That smoke is going throughout the entire area. When I first got here, stopped at a shopping center a couple of miles away, and you could smell the smoke. Ashes were everywhere, and that's the case for the surrounding community. So they're obviously trying to get this fire out, or at least get the smoke out. It's contained. The fire is contained, but trying to do what they can as we go back over here and look at some of the water being put on the fire, do what they can to get that smoke out, because it is causing some air quality issues here in the surrounding community, as you might expect.
Now, before the commercial break, we shared with you just some comments here from one of our reporters in Fox LA on the scene as they were speaking to a fireman there, providing the latest updates. It was very brief, but I wanted to share this here with you. If you are just joining us, suspected arson sparking this massive fire at an Ontario warehouse. That's about 45 minutes east of Los Angeles. Let's share those comments here with you from our Fox 11 LA team.
Updates more from the deputy chief as well, and keep you posted, of course, throughout the morning on this massive fire right here in Ontario.
Is the fire believed to have started inside this warehouse, and was it spotted by employees? And what was done to evacuate the employees? Because it looks like this fire had spread pretty quickly.
We do know, I believe, that fire did start inside the warehouse as well. But in terms of who reported it first, that's still being looked at, I believe, correct?
I'm sorry, repeat the question.
Was fire first reported by an employee, or do we know is it residents nearby?
Sure. The Ontario Fire Department received multiple